Thank you, Mr. Pritchard. It's a pleasure to serve with your chairmanship, and I want to thank my honourable friend for the elegant way he presented his speech and for the thoughtful and excellent contributions from across both sides of this chamber. As has been elaborated on, confidence in our democracies and our elected officials stands somewhat at a juncture, the result of an ever-increasing deficit in confidence in politics and our politicians, which runs as far back as the financial crisis and has accelerated since with some of the events that colleagues have mentioned. And we know that democracy depends on participation, engagement and trust. And when that is undermined and attacked, democracy itself is weakened. The people of Ukraine know the brutality of the Russian regime and Russian warfare, but so too, as was mentioned earlier, do the people of this country, what with the Salisbury poisonings and, of course, Alexander Litvinenko, who was obviously assassinated on British soil. But as the Intelligence and Security Committee has made clear, Russian interference does not just involve tanks and poisonous chemicals. Instead, it operates seditiously through money, misinformation, cyber activity and influence. We know that Russia has developed a long-term strategy to interfere in Western democracies, including our own. And whilst the goal is not necessarily to support one political party over the rest, their goal is most definitely to create division, sow distrust and cause harm to our economy, our society and to our national security. Now, of course, I say their goal is not necessarily to support one political party over another. However, there's been much expanded on in this debate so far. When it comes to the case of Nathan Gill, the former Welsh leader of Reform UK, one might be mistaken for thinking that this actually might be the case. And as has been said, by looking at the number of Welsh constituents that have signed this petition, including my own constituency of Cardiff West, which, when I last checked, was fourth highest on the league table, it is evident that the disgust felt by the people of Wales at Nathan Gill's treachery has struck a chord. Let's just remind ourselves very quickly of the crimes he committed. He committed 8 counts of bribery, taking bribes from pro-Russian actors, and is now serving 10.5 years in prison for his treachery. Specifically, while serving as an MEP for the people of Wales, he accepted at least, as my honourable friend said, £40,000 in payments. He made speeches in the European Parliament, scripted by the Kremlin, doing their bidding. And shockingly, he was also trying to recruit his mates, his friends, his colleagues in the European Parliament to do the same to keep the rubles flowing. Now, at first, some of Reform UK's leadership claimed they didn't know who this person was. Then, the member for Clacton, whom I have notified, said he was just, quote, a bad apple. But whilst their attempts to whitewash history, Gill from their history, has clearly failed and must fail, it is clear the only way a political party such as Reform UK can be straight with the British public about the extent of Russia's links is for them to do 2 things. Number 1, launch a full independent investigation into all of their links to Russia. And number 2, commit to fully cooperating with Philip Rycroft's review and to accept every recommendation Rycroft makes. Of course, they're not here, as has been said, in order to answer that point. And to date, they failed to do so, which is surprising, not so surprising, and yet shocking. And just today, Madam Chair, Politico had an article by the excellent Esther Webber entitled, quote, "Nigel Farage tries to fix his Russia problem." And boy, does he know he's got one. Because a More in Common poll last year showed that despite the fact that every voter group overwhelmingly backs Ukraine over Russia, just 26% of Brits thinks that he does. And actually 21% of them think that the member for Clacton sympathises more with Russia. That's astonishing and incredibly dangerous for our democracy. But I know that my constituents in Cardiff West and the Welsh public won't be fooled by any such attempt at a makeover, given the overwhelming stench that pervades from them. The only way that we can seriously fix that stench that surrounds Russian interference and their conspiracy is to do what I've already outlined. And I will now turn to the Elections Bill, Madam Chair, which, for these reasons and for the other excellent reasons expanded on by colleagues today, is why this bill is such an important moment in our attempts, a critical moment, to curb the extent of Russian interference and other interference in our elections.
Will my honourable friend give way?
I will. I think my honourable friend makes an excellent point. And of course, he makes the point about the donations that we know about. When it comes to cryptocurrency, we don't know who the paymasters behind those payments are. But he makes an excellent point, and I agree with him fully. Some of what the government has announced in relation to the elections bill already in order to toughen, and the strategy beforehand, in order to toughen up the rules relating to political finance are welcome. However, for the reasons that have been mentioned, we must go further, and I would urge them to go further, to ensure this opportunity to safeguard our democracy isn't missed. As was mentioned by my honourable friend, the Kremlin has for at least 15 years exploited loopholes in political financing rules, and that must be stopped. Additionally, the Electoral Commission's independence, enforcement powers and resources must be strengthened as a matter of urgency. We should ban crypto donations, all crypto donations to political parties and individuals. To my mind, there is no legitimate rationale for donating via such means unless the ultimate donor wishes to disguise their true identity. This ban should be brought into effect urgently and capture donations by any means, whether through as a principal or through intermediaries. Improved cooperation between our Electoral Commission, intelligence services, law enforcement and electoral authorities must be a priority. And I'd suggest to my honourable friend the Minister that the new National Police Service, part of recently announced reforms to policing, might be a suitable vehicle to consider establishing dedicated police capability for electoral crime. And critically, we must urgently deal with disinformation and online operations, treating them as the core national security threat that they are. Currently, the Electoral Commission, Ofcom, the police, all of these authorities need more resources and are underpowered to deal with the threat of personalised algorithmic feeds and AI-enabled manipulation that feeds misinformation about our elections. And to just depart, not specifically about Russia, Madam Chair, but recently when Iran was attacked by Israel and America in those targeted strikes in last year, it was reported that 20,000 bots were taken out in Scotland, 20,000 bots taken out in Scotland, which were advocating for Scottish independence as a result of those strikes. Now, if that is what Iran could be doing in one instance there, imagine what North Korea, Russia, China are also doing, and this is why we have to take these threats seriously. And as the Honourable Member for Ceredigion-Preseli mentioned earlier, the important May elections will be a real test for what we need to do in order to respond to such foreign narrative-shaping operations. So finally, I would ask the Minister to urgently consider these measures and take this back to the various departments in order to ensure we get a robust elections bill that is ready for 2026 and for everything that comes, given the way technology is fast changing. But could I finally ask him to sort of join me in recommitting ourselves as part of this strategy to the NATO alliance as a bulwark against Russian aggression, something unserious politicians, like I'm afraid the leader of the Green Party, seems to doubt, thereby doing Russia's work for them. Alliances, the right tools, resources, an elections bill that will absolutely seek to support our democracy and not undermine it are critical tools we need in order to curb Russian interference.